In the quiet hours of your evening, as the familiar world settles around you, there exist beneath our feet the remnants of entire civilizations that once thrived with all the complexity and ambition of our own, yet have vanished so completely that we barely remember their names. Tonight we'll journey through 1,000 years of human achievement and disappearance, exploring societies that built magnificent cities, developed sophisticated technologies, and created art that rivaled anything we know today. Let the day's concerns fade away. Forget about time itself. There's nowhere urgent you need to be, nothing pressing demanding your attention. For the next few hours, we'll walk together through the ruins of forgotten empires, through the archaeological evidence of peoples who believed their civilizations would last forever, yet left behind only fragments for us to piece together like a vast, incomplete puzzle. These are not distant, primitive societies. These are complex civilizations with writing systems we still struggle to decode, architectural achievements that challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities, and social structures that supported millions of people across vast territories. They had their own scientists, artists, philosophers, and engineers. They faced the same fundamental human challenges we do: how to organize society, how to feed growing populations, how to defend against threats, how to find meaning in existence. Yet they are gone, leaving behind only whispers in stone and pottery, tantalizing glimpses of worlds as real and vivid as ours, now existing only in the patient work of archaeologists and the imagination of those willing to listen to their stories. Let's begin this unhurried exploration with one of the most mysterious disappearances in human history, a civilization so advanced and widespread that its sudden collapse still puzzles scholars today. The Indus Valley Civilization flourished for over 800 years, from approximately 3,300 to 1,300 BCE, across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. At its peak around 2,600 BCE, it was the largest civilization in the ancient world, covering more territory than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Over 4 million people lived in more than 1,000 settlements that stretched across 1.25 million square kilometers of the Indus River Valley and beyond. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, discovered in the 1920s, revealed a level of urban planning that wouldn't be seen again for millennia. Streets laid out in perfect grids, sophisticated drainage systems, public baths, and standardized weights and measures suggest a centralized authority capable of coordinating vast engineering projects across enormous distances. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, a precisely built pool lined with bitumen for waterproofing, hints at ritual practices we can only guess at. What strikes archaeologists most forcefully is the apparent absence of palaces, temples, or monuments to individual rulers. Unlike their contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia, who left behind pyramids, ziggurats, and countless inscriptions celebrating royal achievements, the Indus Valley people seem to have organized their society along more egalitarian lines. The houses in their cities, while varying in size, don't show the extreme disparities typical of highly stratified ancient societies. Their script, found on thousands of seals and pottery fragments, remains undeciphered despite nearly a century of scholarly effort. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which were eventually decoded using bilingual texts or known historical references, the Indus script stands alone. The symbols are elegant and varied. Over 400 different signs have been identified, but without a Rosetta Stone equivalent, their meaning remains locked away. We can see that they had a writing system, but we cannot hear their voices. The standardization across the entire civilization is remarkable. Bricks were manufactured to identical proportions, whether found in the northern city of Harappa or the southern port of Lothal, over 600 kilometers away. The weights and measures were uniform across thousands of sites. This suggests not just trade connections, but a shared cultural and administrative system that maintained consistency across vast distances for centuries. Yet around 1900 BCE, this sophisticated civilization began to decline. The carefully planned cities started to show signs of neglect. New construction became haphazard. The standardized systems of weights and measures gave way to local variations. By 1300 BCE, the great cities were largely abandoned, and the Indus Valley civilization had faded into prehistory. What caused this collapse? The evidence is frustratingly incomplete. Climate change certainly played a role. The Saraswati River, which had provided water for many settlements, began to dry up as monsoon patterns shifted. Archaeological evidence suggests increasing aridity throughout the region. Some settlements moved closer to remaining water sources, while others were simply abandoned. There's no clear evidence of warfare or invasion, despite older theories about Aryan invasions destroying the civilization. The decline appears to have been gradual rather than sudden, more of a slow dispersal than a catastrophic collapse. Perhaps the administrative systems that had maintained unity across such a vast area simply couldn't adapt to changing environmental conditions. Perhaps internal conflicts arose as resources became scarce. Perhaps the civilization simply evolved into something different, its people absorbed into new cultural patterns that emerged in the same regions. The irony is profound. The Indus Valley people left behind more physical evidence than almost any other ancient civilization. Thousands of sites, millions of artifacts, detailed city plans that reveal their daily lives. Yet because we cannot read their script, they remain more mysterious than civilizations that left behind far less material evidence, but whose languages we can understand. They had something to say, clearly, but we cannot hear them across the millennia. Their disappearance foreshadowed a pattern that would repeat throughout history. The fragility of even the most sophisticated human societies in the face of environmental change, internal stress, and the simple passage of time. The Indus Valley civilization had endured for longer than our current civilization has existed, yet it vanished so completely that it was forgotten until modern archaeologists rediscovered it. But the Indus Valley was not unique in its mysterious disappearance. Across the ancient world, other complex societies were facing their own challenges, leaving behind their own incomplete stories. On the island of Crete, another sophisticated civilization was reaching its own mysterious end. The Minoans, as archaeologist Arthur Evans named them after the legendary King Minos, had dominated the eastern Mediterranean for over 1,000 years, from roughly 2,700 to 1,100 BCE. Their palatial centres at Knossos, Phaistos and Malea revealed a society of remarkable artistic achievement and commercial reach. The Palace of Knossos, partially reconstructed by Evans in the early 20th century, covered over 13,000 square metres and rose 4 stories high. Its throne room, with walls decorated with griffin frescoes and its complex layout of corridors and chambers, may have inspired the later Greek legends of the labyrinth. The Minoans were master engineers, creating sophisticated drainage systems, running water, and even what appears to be the world's first known flush toilets. Their art suggests a society unlike any other in the ancient world. Frescoes show women and men participating equally in religious ceremonies and sporting events, including the famous bull-leaping scenes that may have had ritual significance. The snake goddess figurines, with their elaborate dress and sacred serpents, suggest a prominent role for female deities or priestesses. Unlike the heavily fortified cities of their contemporaries, Minoan settlements seem to have been undefended, suggesting either remarkable peace or confidence in their naval supremacy. The Minoans were master traders whose ships carried goods throughout the Mediterranean. Minoan pottery has been found in Egypt, Anatolia, and the Levant. They exported fine ceramics, metalwork, and agricultural products, while importing tin, copper, ivory, and precious stones. Their Linear A script, found on thousands of tablets and inscriptions, was clearly used for administrative purposes, but like the Indus script, it remains undeciphered, leaving much of their social and religious life mysterious. Around 1450 BCE, the Minoan civilization experienced a sudden transformation. The major palaces were destroyed, Linear A was replaced by Linear B, which recorded an early form of Greek, and Mycenaean Greek cultural elements began appearing throughout Crete. The nature of this transition, whether it involved conquest, natural disaster, internal collapse, or some combination of factors, remains debated. Some scholars point to the massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern Santorini, around 1627 BCE as a catalyst for Minoan decline. This eruption, one of the largest in recorded history, would have sent tsunamis across the eastern Mediterranean and covered Crete with volcanic ash. However, the chronology is problematic. The eruption preceded the final collapse by nearly 2 centuries, and Minoan civilization actually seems to have flourished in the intervening period. Others suggest that Mycenaean Greeks gradually took control of Crete through military conquest or cultural dominance. The appearance of Linear B tablets, weapons caches, and mainland Greek burial practices in Crete supports this theory. But the transition appears to have been more complex than a simple invasion. with elements of Minoan culture persisting alongside Greek innovations. Climate change may also have played a role. Evidence suggests increasing aridity in the eastern Mediterranean during the Late Bronze Age, which could have stressed Minoan agricultural systems and disrupted their trade networks. Internal social tensions, perhaps exacerbated by environmental challenges, might have made Minoan society vulnerable to external pressures. The end result was the disappearance of one of the ancient world's most distinctive cultures. The Minoans, who had created the dolphin frescoes of Knossos, the elegant Kamares pottery, and the sophisticated drainage systems of their palaces, faded into the background of Greek legend. Their language died out, their script became unreadable, and their unique social practices were absorbed into the broader Greek cultural world. Yet their influence lingered in unexpected ways. Greek myths of the Minotaur, the Labyrinth, and King Minos may preserve distorted memories of Minoan Crete. Archaeological evidence suggests that certain religious practices and artistic motifs passed from Minoan to Greek culture. But the Minoans as a distinct civilization had vanished, leaving behind beautiful ruins and indecipherable texts that speak of a world we can see but not fully understand. The collapse of Bronze Age civilizations was not limited to the Indus Valley and Crete. Around 1200 BCE, a wave of destruction swept across the eastern Mediterranean, bringing down empires and city-states that had flourished for centuries. The Hittite Empire, which had rivaled Egypt and controlled much of modern Turkey and Syria, suddenly collapsed. Mycenaean Greek civilization, which had dominated the Aegean after the Minoans, fragmented into isolated communities. The great trading cities of the Levantine coast were destroyed or abandoned. The causes of this Bronze Age collapse remain hotly debated. Ancient texts speak of invasions by the mysterious sea peoples, groups whose origins and identities remain unclear. Egyptian records describe battles against these seaborne invaders, depicting them with distinctive feathered headdresses and advanced weapons. But were the sea peoples invaders who caused the collapse, or refugees fleeing from disasters elsewhere? Climate change appears to have played a significant role. Pollen analysis and other paleo-environmental evidence suggest a severe drought struck the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BCE, lasting for perhaps 3 centuries. Agricultural systems that had supported dense populations for millennia suddenly failed. Cities that had thrived on trade found their commercial networks disrupted as political systems collapsed across the region. The sophisticated palace economies of the Late Bronze Age, which had coordinated production and distribution across vast territories through complex bureaucratic systems, proved vulnerable to disruption. When the administrative centres fell, the specialised knowledge needed to maintain these systems was lost. The Linear B tablets from Mycenaean palaces, for instance, record incredibly detailed inventories of livestock, land holdings and tribute obligations. When the palaces burned, this administrative knowledge disappeared, and with it the ability to organise society at the same level of complexity. The ironworking technology that spread throughout the region during this period may have been both cause and consequence of the collapse. Iron weapons were cheaper to produce than bronze, potentially democratising warfare and undermining the military dominance of palace-based elites. But iron technology also emerged as societies struggled to adapt to the disruption of bronze trade networks that had brought tin from distant sources. What followed was a dark age that lasted for centuries. Population levels dropped dramatically. Writing systems disappeared in most areas. Monumental architecture ceased. The international trade networks that had connected the eastern Mediterranean to regions as distant as Afghanistan and the British Isles were severed. It would be centuries before new civilizations arose to match the complexity and reach of those that had been lost. Yet even as the Bronze Age civilizations collapsed in the eastern Mediterranean, new societies were emerging in other parts of the world. In the Americas, sophisticated civilizations were developing in complete isolation from Old World influences, following their own trajectories of growth and complexity. The Olmec civilization, emerging along the Gulf Coast of Mexico around 1400 BCE, represents one of humanity's independent experiments in creating complex society. Often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the Olmecs developed many of the cultural and technological foundations that would influence later civilizations like the Maya and Aztecs. The Olmec centers at La Venta, San Lorenzo, and Tres Zapotes featured massive earthen pyramids, elaborate drainage systems, and monumental stone sculptures. The famous Olmec heads, some weighing over 40 tons and standing nearly 10 feet tall, were carved from basalt quarried more than 100 kilometers away and somehow transported through difficult terrain to their final locations. The logistics of moving such massive stones, without wheels or large domesticated animals, suggests a society capable of mobilizing enormous labor forces for symbolic projects. But the Olmecs were more than monument builders. They developed one of the world's earliest writing systems, though most of their texts remain undeciphered. They created a sophisticated calendar system and were among the first to use the concept of zero in mathematical calculations. Their art suggests a complex religious and mythological system that included were-jaguar deities, feathered serpents, and elaborate shamanistic traditions. Around 400 BCE, Olmec civilization began to decline. The great centres were gradually abandoned, and the distinctive Olmec art style disappeared. The reasons for this decline remain unclear, but climate change and internal conflicts may have played roles. Increasing aridity in the Gulf Coast region could have stressed agricultural systems, while competition between different Olmec centres might have weakened the civilization from within. However, unlike the Indus Valley or Minoan civilizations, Olmec culture didn't simply vanish. Their innovations, writing, calendar systems, urban planning, monumental architecture, were adopted and developed by subsequent Mesoamerican civilizations. The Maya, who emerged several centuries later, built upon Olmec foundations to create one of the world's most sophisticated civilizations. Maya civilization, which flourished from roughly 2000 BCE to 1500 CE, represents one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. In the tropical rainforests of Guatemala, Belize, southern Mexico, and western Honduras, Maya city-states developed writing systems, astronomical knowledge, mathematical concepts, and architectural techniques that rivaled anything in the Old World. The Maya created the most advanced writing system in pre-Columbian America, with over 800 distinct glyphs that could represent syllables, words, or concepts. Their scribes recorded historical events, astronomical observations, mythological stories, and administrative records on stone monuments, painted ceramics, and bark paper books. Although Spanish conquistadors and missionaries destroyed most Maya books, considering them works of the devil, 4 codices survived to provide glimpses into Maya intellectual life. Maya astronomers achieved remarkable precision in tracking celestial movements. They calculated the length of the solar year to 365.242 days, more accurate than the Julian calendar used in Europe at the time. Their Venus tables predicted the planet's movements centuries into the future with errors of only days. They recorded lunar eclipses, tracked the movements of Mars and other planets, and developed complex calendar systems that meshed multiple cycles to create a temporal framework of extraordinary sophistication. Maya mathematicians independently developed the concept of zero and used a vigesimal base 20 number system that allowed them to perform complex calculations. Their architects created corbelled arches, multi-story buildings, and vast plaza complexes that required advanced engineering knowledge. Cities like Tikal, Karakol, and Calakmul supported populations in the tens of thousands and controlled territories covering hundreds of square kilometers. Yet Maya civilization was never a unified empire. Instead, it consisted of dozens of independent city-states that alternately allied and fought with each other in a complex web of political relationships. Maya texts record the names of rulers, their genealogies, their military victories, and their ritual activities. We know of kings like Jazarchankawil of Tikal, who defeated the rival city of Calakmul in 695 CE, and Lady Six Sky of Wakabnal, who ruled for over 6 decades and oversaw major architectural projects. The Maya developed intensive agricultural techniques that supported dense populations in challenging tropical environments. They created raised fields in swampy areas, terraced hillsides, and sophisticated water management systems that collected and stored rainwater. Recent LiDAR surveys have revealed the true extent of Maya landscape modification. The forests of Guatemala and Belize are crisscrossed with ancient canals, roads, terraces, and the remains of thousands of previously unknown structures. During the Classic period, 250 to 900 CE, Maya civilization reached its peak. Magnificent cities like Palenque, Copan, and Yaxmul flourished, their temples and palaces decorated with intricate sculptures and painted murals. Population levels reached their highest point. with some estimates suggesting that the Maya lowland supported over 10 million people. Then, beginning in the late 8th century CE, many Maya cities began to experience problems. Construction projects were abandoned, dated monuments became less frequent, populations declined. By 900 CE, most of the great classic period cities had been largely abandoned, their temples and palaces gradually consumed by the returning forest. This classic Maya collapse was not uniform. Some cities declined earlier, others later. Northern Yucatan continued to flourish for centuries after the southern lowland cities were abandoned. But in the core regions of Maya civilization, complex political and economic systems that had functioned for over a millennium simply ceased to operate effectively. The causes of the classic Maya collapse have been intensively studied and debated. Climate data suggests a severe drought struck the Maya region in the late 9th century, lasting for decades. The Maya had survived earlier droughts, but this one coincided with peak population levels and intensive landscape use that may have made the system more vulnerable to environmental stress. Political instability certainly played a role. Maya texts from the period record increasing warfare between city-states, suggesting that competition for resources intensified as environmental conditions deteriorated. The complex trade networks that had connected Maya cities to distant sources of obsidian, jade, and other materials may have broken down as political systems collapsed. Internal social tensions may have contributed to the collapse. Some scholars suggest that the elaborate royal courts and massive construction projects of the classic period placed increasing burdens on agricultural populations. When environmental stress made it difficult to maintain agricultural surpluses, the entire system may have become unsustainable. But the Maya didn't simply disappear. Millions of Maya people continued to live in the region, maintaining their languages, agricultural techniques, and many cultural traditions. New centers of Maya civilization emerged in northern Yucatan, where cities like Chichen Itza and Mayapan flourished for centuries after the classic period collapse. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they encountered dozens of independent Maya polities, each with its own rulers, territories, and traditions. The Spanish conquest brought devastating changes to Maya civilization. Disease epidemics killed vast numbers of people. Colonial administrators dismantled traditional political systems. Missionaries suppressed Maya religious practices and burned their books. The remaining Maya were incorporated into Spanish colonial society as peasant farmers and laborers. Yet Maya culture survived in transformed ways. Maya languages are still spoken by over 6 million people in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Traditional agricultural techniques, textile production, and religious practices continue in many communities. The mathematical and astronomical knowledge that had made Maya civilization one of the world's most intellectually sophisticated cultures gradually faded, but the people who had created that civilization endured. The story of the Maya illustrates both the resilience and fragility of human civilizations. A culture capable of predicting eclipses centuries in advance and creating architectural masterpieces that still inspire awe could not survive the combination of environmental stress, political instability, and external conquest that mark the end of their independence. Yet the fundamental elements of Maya identity, language, agricultural knowledge, community organization, proved more durable than their monuments and codices. While Maya civilization was flourishing in the Americas, equally sophisticated societies were developing in other parts of the world, each following their own unique trajectories. In Southeast Asia, the Khmer Empire was creating one of the most magnificent architectural achievements in human history. Angkor, the capital of the Khmer Empire from the 9th to 15th centuries CE, covered over 1,000 square kilometers and may have supported a population of 1 million people, making it one of the world's largest pre-industrial cities. The temple complexes of Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom, built during the empire's peak in the 12th and 13th centuries, represent architectural and engineering achievements that rival anything created in the medieval world. Angkor Wat, constructed during the reign of Suryavarman VII, 1113 to 1150 CE, was designed as a temple mountain representing Mount Meru, the center of the universe in Hindu cosmology. The temple's layout mirrors the structure of the cosmos, with concentric galleries representing the mountain ranges surrounding Mount Meru and a central tower symbolizing the peak where the gods reside. The precision of the temple's astronomical alignments, the sophistication of its hydraulic systems, and the intricacy of its stone carvings demonstrate a level of technical and artistic mastery that took centuries to develop. The Khmer Empire was built on intensive rice agriculture made possible by massive hydraulic engineering projects. The rulers of Angkor constructed hundreds of reservoirs, canals and dikes that controlled water flow across the vast Angkor plain. These systems not only provided irrigation for rice cultivation, but also served symbolic and ritual purposes, representing the cosmic oceans that surrounded Mount Meru in Hindu mythology. Archaeological research has revealed the true extent of Angkor's urban landscape. Using remote sensing technology, researchers have mapped a complex network of canals, roads, ponds and residential areas that extends far beyond the famous temple complexes. The city was organised along a grid system that integrated religious architecture, administrative buildings and residential neighbourhoods into a coherent urban plan. The Khmer Empire controlled much of mainland Southeast Asia at its peak, with tributary relationships extending into modern Thailand, Laos, Vietnam and Burma. Khmer armies, mounted on war elephants and armed with sophisticated weapons, dominated the region's politics for centuries. The empire's wealth, based on rice agriculture and control of trade routes, supported the massive construction projects and elaborate court ceremonies that characterized Angkorian civilization. Yet by the 15th century, the great city of Angkor was largely abandoned. The reasons for this abandonment remain debated, but environmental factors clearly played a significant role. Tree ring data from the region suggests that the 14th and 15th centuries saw extreme climate variability, with severe droughts alternating with devastating floods. The massive hydraulic systems that had made Angkor's intensive agriculture possible may have become liabilities when environmental conditions changed. The water management network that supported Angkor was incredibly complex but also fragile. Maintenance required constant attention and significant labour investment. When political authority weakened or population declined, the system could rapidly degrade. Broken dikes could cause catastrophic flooding, while neglected canals could silt up and become useless for irrigation. Political factors also contributed to Angkor's decline. The rise of Ayutthaya in Thailand created a powerful rival that challenged Khmer dominance in the region. Repeated wars with Thai armies weakened the empire and may have disrupted the administrative systems needed to maintain Angkor's infrastructure. In 1431, Ayutthaya forces captured and briefly occupied Angkor, marking the end of the city's role as a major political centre. Cultural and religious changes may have accelerated Angkor's abandonment. The adoption of Theravada Buddhism by many Khmer rulers in the 13th and 14th centuries represented a shift away from the Hindu-inspired ideology that had justified the massive temple-building projects of earlier centuries. Theravada Buddhism emphasized simplicity and detachment from worldly concerns, values that conflicted with the elaborate court ceremonies and monumental architecture that had characterized Angkorian civilization. As Angkor declined, new centres of Khmer power emerged closer to the Mekong River and the coast. The capital was moved to Phnom Penh, where better access to maritime trade routes provided new sources of wealth and power. The great temples of Angkor, built to last for eternity, were gradually abandoned to the forest, though Buddhist monks continued to maintain some structures as pilgrimage sites. The abandonment of Angkor represents one of history's most dramatic examples of urban collapse. A city that had been one of the world's largest and most sophisticated was reduced to a few temple complexes surrounded by jungle. The hydraulic systems that had supported intensive agriculture for centuries failed, and the forests reclaimed the rice fields and residential areas that had once housed hundreds of thousands of people. French explorers in the 19th century found Angkor in ruins, its temples barely visible through the vegetation that had grown over them. Early visitors described massive trees growing through temple roofs, with roots splitting apart stones that had been precisely fitted centuries earlier. The sight of nature reclaiming human achievement became a powerful symbol of the impermanence of civilizations. Yet the Khmer people survived the abandonment of Angkor, just as the Maya had survived the Classic period collapse. Khmer culture, language and traditions continued in the new centres of power that emerged along the Mekong River. The techniques of rice cultivation, bronze working and textile production that had supported Angkorian civilization were passed down through generations of farmers and craftspeople. The story of Angkor illustrates the complex relationships between environmental conditions, political organisation and cultural values that determine whether civilizations thrive or decline. The same hydraulic systems that enabled Angkor's greatness also made it vulnerable to environmental change. The religious and political ideologies that motivated massive construction projects could shift in ways that made those projects seem less important. The wealth and power that attracted enemies could ultimately lead to military conflicts that undermined social stability. But perhaps the most profound lesson of Angkor's abandonment is the reminder that even the most impressive human achievements are temporary. The temple builders who carved the elaborate bas-reliefs of Angkor Wat believed they were creating monuments that would last forever. The hydraulic engineers who designed the complex water management systems thought they were building infrastructure that would support their civilization indefinitely. Yet within a few centuries, the jungle had reclaimed both temples and canals, leaving only ruins as evidence of one of humanity's greatest urban civilizations. As the great centres of Angkor were being abandoned in the 15th century, other civilizations around the world were facing their own challenges and transformations. On Easter Island, one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth, the Rapa Nui people were experiencing an ecological and social crisis that would become one of history's most studied examples of societal collapse. Easter Island, known to its inhabitants as Rapa Nui, was settled by Polynesian voyagers sometime between 700 and 1200 CE. These remarkable seafarers had navigated across thousands of kilometres of open ocean using traditional sailing techniques, celestial navigation, and an intimate knowledge of wind and wave patterns to reach this isolated speck of land in the southeastern Pacific Ocean. The island they found was covered by a subtropical forest dominated by massive palm trees, some reaching heights of over 25 metres. Archaeological evidence suggests that when the Polynesians arrived, the island supported diverse bird populations, including large seabirds that nested in the forest canopy. The coastal waters teemed with fish, dolphins, and other marine life that provided abundant protein sources for the new inhabitants. Over the centuries, the Rapa Nui people developed a unique civilization that expressed itself most famously in the creation of nearly 1,000 massive stone statues called moai. These monumental sculptures, carved from volcanic tuff at the quarry site of Rano-Raraku, represent ancestors or chiefs, and were apparently intended to watch over and protect the communities that created them. The logistics of moai production and transportation demonstrate sophisticated organisational capabilities. The statues range in height from about 3 to 10 metres and weigh between 15 and 80 tonnes. They were carved using basalt tools at Rano-Raraku, then somehow moved across the island to platforms called ahu where they were erected. Recent experimental archaeology suggests that the moai may have been walked upright across the island using a system of ropes that rocked them forward in a coordinated movement. The construction of moai and ahu required substantial labour investment and social coordination. Each ahu represented a community project that brought together extended family groups to quarry stone, carve statues, transport massive blocks, and perform the ceremonies associated with ancestral veneration. The largest ahu, such as Ahu Tongariki with its 15 moai, represent communal efforts on a scale that required cooperation among hundreds of people over many years. But the very success of Rapa Nui civilization may have contained the seeds of its downfall. As the population grew, reaching perhaps 15,000 people by 1400 CE, pressure on the island's limited resources intensified. The construction of moai accelerated during this period, with communities apparently competing to create larger and more impressive monuments. The demand for wood to move the moai, construct houses and canoes, and provide fuel for cooking and warmth gradually depleted the island's forests. Archaeological analysis of pollen cores from the island's crater lakes shows a steady decline in tree populations beginning around 1200 CE. By 1400 CE, the great palm forests that had covered the island were largely gone, cleared for construction projects, agriculture, and fuel. Deforestation had cascading effects throughout the island's ecosystem. Without trees to protect the soil, erosion increased dramatically. Agricultural productivity declined as topsoil washed into the ocean. The elimination of large seabirds, which had provided both food and valuable feathers for trade with other Polynesian islands, further reduced available resources. The loss of large trees meant that the Rapa Nui people could no longer build the ocean-going canoes that had connected them to other Pacific islands. They became increasingly isolated, unable to supplement local resources through trade or migration. archaeological evidence suggests that diet breadth expanded during this period, as people began eating smaller birds, rats, and eventually each other during times of extreme scarcity. Social tensions increased as resources became scarce. The Moai construction that had previously unified communities in collaborative projects became a source of conflict as groups competed for dwindling resources. Around 1500 CE, many Moai were toppled, apparently during conflicts between different clans or communities. The peaceful society that had created one of the world's most remarkable collections of monumental sculpture descended into warfare and social chaos. When Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen arrived at Easter Island on Easter Sunday 1722, he found a much reduced population living in a largely treeless landscape. The Great Moai still stood on their platforms, but the society that had created them was clearly in decline. Subsequent European visitors described a population of only a few thousand people struggling to survive on an island that showed clear signs of environmental degradation. The collapse of Rapa Nui civilization has been interpreted as a cautionary tale about the dangers of environmental overexploitation. Jared Diamond, in his book Collapse, used Easter Island as an example of how civilizations can destroy their own resource base through unsustainable practices. The image of the last tree being cut on Easter Island has become a powerful metaphor for humanity's relationship with the natural environment. However, recent scholarship has complicated this narrative by emphasizing the role of European contact in Rapa Nui's decline. Disease epidemics introduced by European visitors devastated the population. Slave raids in the 1860s removed many of the island's remaining inhabitants. The introduction of sheep by Chilean ranchers in the late 19th century completed the transformation of the island's landscape, as the animals ate the remaining native plants and further accelerated soil erosion. The story of Easter Island illustrates the complex interactions between environmental constraints, social organisation, and external pressures that can lead to societal collapse. While environmental degradation clearly played a role in Rapa Nui's difficulties, the complete collapse of the civilization was accelerated by contact with European explorers and colonisers who brought diseases, violence, and economic exploitation. The Moai of Easter Island stand today as monuments to both human achievement and human limitations. These remarkable sculptures demonstrate the creative capacity of isolated human communities to develop unique forms of artistic and religious expression. Yet their creation may have contributed to the environmental problems that ultimately undermined the civilization that carved them. They remind us that the same human drive to create lasting monuments can sometimes conflict with the need to live sustainably within environmental constraints. As we consider the stories of these lost civilizations, the Indus Valley with its undeciphered script, the Minoans with their elegant palaces, the classic Maya with their sophisticated astronomy, the Khmer with their magnificent temples, and the Rapa Nui with their monumental statues, certain patterns begin to emerge. Environmental change appears as a common factor in many civilizational collapses. Climate shifts, droughts, floods, and resource depletion created stresses that existing social and political systems could not handle. The sophisticated technologies and organizational structures that had enabled these civilizations to flourish could become liabilities when environmental conditions changed. Political instability and warfare often accompanied or followed environmental stress. As resources became scarce, competition between communities intensified. The trade networks and diplomatic relationships that had promoted cooperation during prosperous times could break down when conditions deteriorated. Internal conflicts weakened civilizations and made them more vulnerable to external threats. Yet these collapses were rarely complete extinctions. The people who had created these civilizations usually survived, even if their political systems, monumental architecture, and specialized knowledge were lost. Languages, agricultural techniques, craft traditions, and cultural practices often persisted even after the collapse of the state systems that had supported complex civilization. This resilience of human culture, even in the face of political and environmental catastrophe, suggests something profound about the nature of civilization itself. The most impressive achievements, the temples, palaces, and monuments that we associate with ancient civilizations, may be less fundamental than the everyday knowledge and practices that allow human communities to survive and adapt to changing conditions. The farmers who developed drought-resistant crops, the craftspeople who maintained traditional techniques, and the storytellers who preserved cultural memories may have contributed more to long-term human survival than the rulers who commissioned monuments or the priests who performed elaborate ceremonies. When civilizations collapsed, it was often these humble carriers of practical knowledge who ensured cultural continuity. As we rest in the quiet hours of the night, surrounded by the artifacts and technologies of our own civilization, these stories of lost societies remind us of both human achievement and human vulnerability. The people who built Mohenjo-Daro, carved the Moai of Easter Island, and constructed the temples of Angkor believed their civilizations would endure forever. They developed sophisticated technologies, created beautiful art, and established social systems that supported millions of people across vast territories. Yet they are gone, leaving behind only fragments for us to study and interpret. Their languages are silent, their political systems have vanished, and their great cities lie in ruins. Time has reduced their achievements to archaeological sites and museum displays, puzzles for scholars to debate and tourists to visit. But their stories live on in our collective memory, reminding us that all human achievements are temporary, all civilizations are vulnerable, and all societies must constantly adapt to survive. In the end, what matters most may not be the monuments we build, but the knowledge we preserve and pass on to future generations. The precision with which these ancient civilizations organized themselves becomes even more remarkable when we examine the specific evidence they left behind. The Indus Valley civilization, for instance, maintained standardized brick sizes across its vast territory for over 1,000 years. Excavations at Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira and Lothal have revealed bricks manufactured to identical proportions, a ratio of 4 to 2 to 1 for length, width and height. This standardization extended across 1,500 sites, covering over 1.25 million square kilometers, suggesting a level of administrative control and cultural unity that is difficult to comprehend. The drainage systems in Indus cities display engineering sophistication that wouldn't be matched again until Roman times. Every house in Mohenjo-Daro was connected to a sophisticated sewerage system with covered drains running along the streets. The Great Bath, measuring 12 metres long, 7 metres wide and 2.4 metres deep, was waterproofed with a layer of bitumen and featured an elaborate system of drains and water channels. The precision of the construction, with walls that remain plumb and joints that are still watertight after 4,500 years, demonstrates mastery of hydraulic engineering. Archaeological analysis has revealed the complexity of Indus Valley manufacturing. The bead-making workshops at Chanudaro produced carnelian beads through a sophisticated process involving controlled heating, drilling with bronze tools, and etching with alkaline paste. These beads have been found throughout Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and even in graves in Siberia, indicating trade networks that spanned thousands of kilometers. The standardized weights found throughout Indus sites follow a precise mathematical progression. The basic unit was approximately 13.7 grams, with larger weights following multiples of 16. 1, 2, 8, 16, 32, 64, 160, 320, and 640 times the base unit. Bronze scales accurate to within 0.05 grams have been found at multiple sites, suggesting commercial transactions requiring extreme precision. This level of standardization implies not just trade relationships, but shared legal and commercial frameworks across vast distances. The undeciphered Indus script appears on over 4,000 artifacts, primarily copper tablets and steatite seals. Statistical analysis reveals approximately 400 distinct symbols, with signs frequently appearing in combination sequences of 3 to 7 characters. The script appears to be logosyllabic, similar to early Mesopotamian and Egyptian writing systems, but lacking bilingual texts or known linguistic relatives. It remains unreadable despite computational approaches involving machine learning and frequency analysis. Recent excavations have revealed the true extent of Indus Valley water management technology. At Dholavira, archaeologists uncovered a complex system of dams, reservoirs and channels that collected and stored monsoon rainwater. The city's water storage capacity exceeded 250,000 cubic metres, enough to supply a population of 20,000 people through multi-year droughts. Stone-lined channels with precisely calculated gradients directed water flow across the city with minimal loss to seepage or evaporation. The decline of Indus Valley civilization around 1900 BCE correlates with paleoclimatic data showing a significant shift toward aridity. Oxygen isotope analysis of marine sediments from the Arabian Sea indicates a weakening of monsoon patterns beginning around 2200 BCE, with the most severe drought conditions occurring between 1900 to 1700 BCE. Archaeological surveys show site abandonment patterns that track the drying of river systems, particularly the Gaga Hakra, ancient Saraswati, river system that had supported numerous settlements. The Minoan civilization of Crete provides equally compelling evidence of sophisticated social organisation. Linear A tablets from Aia Triada contain over 300 different signs, including logographic symbols for various commodities and phonetic symbols that may represent syllables in the unknown Minoan language. Approximately 1,400 Linear A inscriptions have been found, primarily on clay tablets, stone offering tables, and bronze implements used in religious ceremonies. Minoan maritime technology represents one of ancient world's great achievements. Frescoes from Akrotiri show ships over 30 metres long with sophisticated sail configurations and steering systems. These vessels, capable of carrying 20 to 30 tons of cargo, connected Crete to ports throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Minoan pottery found at Tel El Daba in Egypt, dating to 1700 to 1600 BCE, indicates direct trade relationships with pharaonic courts. The Palace of Knossos covered 13,000 square metres across 4 stories, containing over 1,300 rooms connected by corridors, staircases and light wells that provided natural illumination to interior spaces. The throne room featured Europe's oldest known throne, carved from gypsum and flanked by frescoes depicting griffins and palm trees. Advanced hydraulic systems included terracotta pipes with tapered joints that increased water flow pressure, flush toilets connected to sewerage systems, and hot and cold running water in residential quarters. Minoan agricultural technology supported populations that may have exceeded 100,000 people on Crete during the Late Bronze Age. Terraced hillsides, some still visible today, prevented soil erosion while creating microclimates suitable for different crops. Storage magazines in palaces contained massive pithoi, storage jars, capable of holding over 1,000 litres of grain, oil or wine. Chemical analysis of organic residues in these containers reveals a diet that included wheat, barley, lentils, figs, grapes, and olives, supplemented with meat from cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs. The Thera volcanic eruption, which occurred around 1627 BCE, based on radiocarbon dating of olive branches buried in ash, ejected approximately 100 cubic kilometres of material into the atmosphere. The explosion, estimated at magnitude 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, would have been heard thousands of kilometres away and created tsunamis reaching heights of 35 to 150 metres on nearby coastlines. Volcanic ash layers found throughout the eastern Mediterranean provide evidence of the eruption's massive scale. However, Minoan civilization continued for nearly 2 centuries after the Thera eruption, suggesting remarkable resilience in the face of environmental catastrophe. Archaeological evidence from Crete shows no immediate collapse following the volcanic eruption. Instead, Minoan culture appears to have adapted and continued developing until the final destruction of palaces around 1450 BCE, when Mycenaean Greek elements begin appearing in the archaeological record. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE affected civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean with devastating uniformity. The Hittite Empire, which had controlled central Anatolia for over 500 years, disappeared virtually overnight. Hattusa, the Hittite capital, was burned and abandoned around 1180 BCE. The destruction was so complete that the Hittite language vanished from use, surviving only in cuneiform archives that wouldn't be deciphered until the 20th century. Mycenaean Greek civilization, which had flourished for over 400 years, experienced equally dramatic collapse. Pylos was destroyed around 1180 BCE, its Linear B archives baked in the fires that consumed the palace. The tablets record the kingdom's final days, inventories of bronze weapons being distributed to coastal watchers, records of rowers being dispatched to defensive positions, and lists of offerings to gods for protection against unnamed enemies. Archaeological evidence suggests population decline of 75 to 90% across many regions of Greece following the collapse. Tiryns, Medea, Iolkos and other major Mycenaean centres were destroyed or abandoned. The complex palace economies that had coordinated production across entire kingdoms simply ceased to function. Specialized crafts like ivory working, fresco painting, and large-scale bronze production disappeared for centuries. Climate proxy data from lake sediments, marine cores, and ice cores consistently show severe drought conditions across the eastern Mediterranean, beginning around 1250 BCE and lasting until approximately 900 BCE. The drought coincided with a period of cooling in the North Atlantic, suggesting a major shift in global climate patterns. Pollen analysis indicates widespread abandonment of agricultural land and reversion to scrub vegetation across formerly cultivated regions. The sea peoples, mentioned in Egyptian records as invasive forces threatening the Nile Delta, remain largely mysterious despite extensive scholarly investigation. Egyptian reliefs from Medinet Habu depicts naval battles against warriors with feathered headdresses, horned helmets, and distinctive weapons. Rameses III claimed victory over these invaders around 1175 BCE, but the identities and origins of the sea peoples remain debated. Some scholars identify the Peliset with the biblical Philistines, the Shurden with Sardinia, and the Lucca with Lycia. However, these identifications remain tentative. What's certain is that the appearance of sea peoples in Egyptian records coincides with the destruction of cities and collapse of political systems throughout the Levant and Anatolia, suggesting massive population movements driven by the broader crisis affecting the region. The Olmec civilization of Mesoamerica developed independently of Old World influences, yet achieved comparable levels of social complexity and artistic sophistication. The Olmec site of La Venta, occupied from 900 to 400 BCE, featured a massive pyramid 34 meters high and containing approximately 100,000 cubic meters of earth and clay. The precision of the pyramid's construction, with its fluted sides and complex internal chambers, required sophisticated knowledge of engineering and mathematics. Olmec sculptural achievements demonstrate mastery of stone carving techniques that rival any ancient civilization. The colossal heads, carved from basalt boulders weighing up to 50 tons, were transported over 100 kilometers from quarries in the Tuxtla Mountains to sites along the Gulf Coast. Recent analysis using 3D scanning technology reveals tool marks consistent with the use of basalt chisels and wooden wedges, suggesting carving techniques that could shape extremely hard stone with remarkable precision. The Olmec writing system, evidenced by inscriptions on the Cascajal block and monuments at La Venta, represents one of the earliest examples of writing in the Americas. The script contains approximately 62 distinct glyphs arranged in horizontal sequences, suggesting a logosyllabic system similar to Maya writing. Carbon dating places the Cascajal block at 900 BCE, making it contemporary with early Chinese writing and significantly predating other known American scripts. Olmec astronomical knowledge is evident in the precise alignments of their ceremonial centers. The La Venta complex is oriented 8 degrees west of magnetic north, an alignment that may have astronomical significance related to the rising of specific stars or planets. Stone monuments at the site record dates in a 260-day ritual calendar that would later be adopted by Maya, Zapotec, and other Mesoamerican civilizations. The jade working techniques developed by Olmec craftsmen required sophisticated knowledge of mineralogy and toolmaking. Olmec jade artifacts carved from jadeite sourced in Guatemala over 1,000 kilometers away demonstrate mastery of techniques for working one of the hardest stones used by ancient civilizations. Analysis of tool marks suggests the use of string saws embedded with abrasive materials, rotary drills with jade or obsidian bits, and polishing techniques using bamboo and fine sand. Maya civilization represents perhaps humanity's greatest achievement in tropical environmental management. Recent LiDAR surveys in Guatemala have revealed over 60,000 previously unknown structures, indicating that Maya populations may have reached 10 to 15 million people in the southern lowlands during the late Classic period, 600 to 900 CE. This population density, approaching 1,500 people per square kilometre in some areas, required intensive agricultural techniques that completely transformed the landscape. Maya agricultural systems included raised fields in wetland areas, terraced slopes in hilly terrain, and forest gardens that maintained tree cover while producing food crops. The raised fields, called waru-waru, were constructed by excavating canals and piling the sediment into planting platforms. These systems, some covering hundreds of square kilometres, increased agricultural productivity while improving water management and creating habitat for fish and waterfowl. Maya water management technology included sophisticated systems for collecting, storing, and distributing rainwater in regions with pronounced dry seasons. At Tikal, engineers constructed reservoirs with capacities exceeding 900,000 litres, enough to supply urban populations through 6-month droughts. The reservoirs were lined with plaster and connected by channels that could direct water flow throughout the urban area. The precision of Maya astronomical observations is demonstrated by their calculations of planetary cycles. The Venus tables in the Dresden Codex predict the planet's synodic period as 584 days, remarkably close to the actual value of 583.92 days. Maya astronomers tracked Venus observations for over 500 years to achieve this precision, creating correction mechanisms that maintained accuracy over long time periods. Maya mathematical achievements included the independent development of positional notation and the concept of zero as a placeholder. Their vigesimal, base 20, number system could express numbers in the millions using combinations of only 3 symbols: a dot, 1, a bar, 5, and a shell-shaped 0. Mathematical calculations on Maya monuments include dates extending millions of years into the past and future, demonstrating conceptual frameworks that encompassed vast temporal scales. The Maya collapse in the southern lowlands involved the abandonment of cities that had functioned for over 600 years. Karakol, which may have supported 200,000 people at its peak, was gradually abandoned between 850 to 900 CE. The city's complex water management systems fell into disrepair, its terraced agricultural systems were overtaken by forest, and its monumental architecture was left to decay. Paleoclimatic data from lake sediments and cave formations indicates severe drought conditions in the Maya region from 810 to 910 CE. The drought was part of a broader pattern of climate change that affected much of Mesoamerica, but its impact was most severe in the southern Maya lowlands, where dense populations had intensively modified forest ecosystems. Speleothem records from caves in Belize and Guatemala show precipitation levels during the terminal classic drought were 40 to 50% below long-term averages. The drought's severity exceeded anything in the previous 2,000 years, creating conditions that existing water management systems couldn't handle. Archaeological evidence shows that cities with more sophisticated water storage systems, like Karakol and Tikal, survived longer than those dependent on surface water sources. The Khmer Empire's water management achievements at Angkor represent perhaps the most ambitious hydraulic engineering project of the pre-industrial world. The system included over 1,000 temples, thousands of reservoirs, and hundreds of kilometres of canals that controlled water flow across 3,000 square kilometres. The West Baray alone covered 16 square kilometres and could store 50 million cubic metres of water. The precision of Khmer hydraulic engineering is demonstrated by the gradients of their canal systems. Channels maintaining slopes of less than 0.1% carried water across distances exceeding 100 kilometres. This required surveying techniques and mathematical calculations comparable to modern engineering standards. The integration of religious, administrative, and residential structures within the water management network created urban landscapes that functioned as both practical infrastructure and sacred geography. Angkor Wat's astronomical alignments demonstrate sophisticated knowledge of celestial mechanics. The temple's central axis points to sunrise on the spring equinox, while its towers align with the lunar standstill positions that occur every 18.6 years. The temple's bas-reliefs include depictions of the 27 lunar mansions used in Indian astronomy, suggesting that Khmer astronomers were familiar with sophisticated calendrical systems. The decline of Angkor correlates with paleoclimatic evidence for extreme weather variability in mainland Southeast Asia during the 14th to 15th centuries. Tree ring data from Vietnam and Thailand indicate alternating periods of severe drought and flooding that would have stressed agricultural systems designed for more predictable seasonal patterns. The failure of Angkor's water management system is documented in sediment cores from the reservoir systems. Analysis shows increasing sedimentation rates beginning in the 13th century, suggesting that deforestation and agricultural intensification were causing soil erosion that gradually filled the reservoirs. By the 15th century, many reservoirs had lost much of their storage capacity. Easter Island's ecological transformation provides detailed evidence for human impact on isolated island ecosystems. Pollen analysis from Crater Lake sediments shows that when Polynesians arrived around 1200 CE, The island was covered by forests dominated by palms reaching heights of 25 metres and diameters of 2 metres. These trees, now extinct, were the largest palms that ever existed. The island's original ecosystem supported at least 25 species of nesting seabirds, including petrels, shearwaters and boobies. Archaeological excavations at early Rapa Nui sites contain bones from over 30 bird species, compared to only one land bird that survives on the island today. The elimination of these bird populations represented a massive loss of protein resources and eliminated sources of feathers and bones used for tools and ornaments. Archaeological evidence documents the intensity of moai production and transportation. At Rano Raraku Quarry, nearly 400 moai remain in various stages of completion. Analysis of basalt tools found at the site suggests that teams of 15 to 20 carvers worked on individual statues for periods of 12 to 15 months. The largest completed moai weighs approximately 82 tons and stands 10 metres tall, representing one of the largest stone sculptures ever moved by pre-industrial technology. The transportation of moai from quarry to platform sites required sophisticated engineering techniques. Recent experiments suggest that statues may have been moved upright using rope systems that rock them forward in a coordinated walking motion. This technique would have required teams of 20 to 30 people and could move statues at rates of 100 to 200 metres per day across the island's rolling terrain. The collapse of Easter Island's forest ecosystem is precisely documented in pollen records from the island's 3 crater lakes. The data shows steady deforestation beginning around 1200 CE, accelerating dramatically between 1400 to 1600 CE. By 1650 CE, palm pollen virtually disappears from the sediment record, indicating complete elimination of the island's original forest cover. The environmental consequences of deforestation were severe and irreversible. Without tree cover, topsoil erosion increased dramatically, reducing agricultural productivity. The loss of large trees eliminated the possibility of building ocean-going canoes, isolating the population from other Pacific islands. Archaeological evidence suggests that diet breadth expanded to include smaller birds, rats, and marine resources that had previously been supplementary foods. Social tensions increased as resources became scarce. Carbon dating of obsidian spear points indicates increased weapon production beginning around 1500 CE. Many moai were toppled during this period, with evidence suggesting deliberate destruction rather than natural collapse. The Hure moai, statue toppling, appears to have been systematic, with nearly all moai on platforms being knocked down between 1500 and 1680 CE. When European explorers began visiting Easter Island in the 18th century, they found a population estimated at 2,000 to 3,000 people living on a largely deforested island. Captain James Cook's visit in 1774 documented a society that appeared impoverished compared to other Polynesian cultures, lacking large canoes, elaborate architecture, and the abundant resources typical of tropical Pacific islands. The final collapse of Rapa Nui society resulted from European contact and its consequences. Disease epidemics reduced the population to perhaps 1,500 people by 1850. Slave raids by Peruvian ships in 1862 to 1863 removed over 1,400 people, including most of the island's remaining chiefs and ritual specialists. Those who were eventually returned brought smallpox epidemics that further reduced the population to fewer than 200 people by 1877. These detailed archaeological and environmental records from lost civilizations provide crucial insights into the complex relationships between human societies and their environments. They document both the remarkable adaptability of human cultures and the ultimate limits imposed by ecological constraints. The precision of ancient engineering, the sophistication of agricultural systems, and the complexity of social organization achieved by these civilizations demonstrate human capability for creating sustainable relationships with natural environments over many centuries. Yet these same records document the vulnerability of even the most sophisticated societies to environmental change, resource depletion, and social instability. The collapse patterns observed in archaeological data suggest that civilizational complexity can become a liability when conditions change rapidly or when populations exceed the carrying capacity of their environments. Perhaps most importantly, these archaeological records preserve evidence of human resilience and cultural continuity even in the face of political collapse and environmental crisis. The knowledge systems that enabled these civilizations to flourish, agricultural techniques, craft traditions, astronomical observations and social practices often survived even when the political and religious institutions that had supported them disappeared. As we settle into the quiet hours of the night, these detailed records from the archaeological past remind us that human civilizations are both remarkably creative and ultimately temporary. The people who built these societies possessed knowledge, skills, and organizational capabilities that in many cases exceeded our own. Yet their achievements, however impressive, could not guarantee their survival when faced with the inevitable challenges of environmental change and social transformation. The ruins they left behind, gradually being revealed by patient archaeological investigation, speak to us across the millennia with increasing clarity and detail. Each new discovery adds to our understanding of human capability and human vulnerability, reminding us that we are part of the same ongoing story of adaptation, achievement, and ultimate impermanence that has characterized our species throughout its history. In the end, these lost civilizations leave us with both inspiration and humility. Inspiration from their remarkable achievements, and humility from the recognition that all human endeavours, no matter how ambitious or sophisticated, must eventually yield to the passage of time and the inexorable processes of environmental and social change. Yet there remain other lost civilizations whose stories we have only begun to uncover, societies that developed sophisticated technologies and social systems in regions far from the well-documented centres of ancient learning. In the heart of Africa, the Kingdom of Kush ruled over vast territories along the Nile for over 1,000 years, creating architectural achievements that rivaled those of Egypt while developing their own distinctive culture and writing system. The Kushite capital of Meroe, located in what is now Sudan, flourished from approximately 800 BCE to 350 CE as one of Africa's most important centres of iron production, trade, and learning. Archaeological excavations have revealed a city with sophisticated urban planning, monumental architecture, and industrial complexes that processed iron ore on a massive scale. The iron furnaces of Meroe were so numerous that early European explorers described the landscape as covered with ancient slag heaps stretching to the horizon. Kushite rulers controlled trade routes that connected sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean world, facilitating the exchange of gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animals from the African interior for manufactured goods, wine, and luxury items from Egypt and the Roman Empire. The wealth generated by this trade supported a royal court that maintained diplomatic relationships with Rome, produced sophisticated art and architecture, and patronised scholars who developed one of Africa's earliest indigenous writing systems. The Meroitic script, used from approximately 300 BCE to 400 CE, represents one of the world's few independently developed writing systems. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which were adapted from existing scripts, Meroitic appears to have been created specifically for the Kushite language. The script includes 23 symbols and was written both hieroglyphically on stone monuments and in a cursive form on pottery and papyrus documents. Despite the preservation of hundreds of Meroitic texts, the language remains largely undeciphered. Scholars have identified phonetic values for most symbols and can read personal names and place names, but the meaning of most texts remains unclear. This linguistic isolation has left Kushite civilization as mysterious as the Indus Valley culture, despite the abundance of archaeological evidence for their achievements. The royal pyramids of Meroe, numbering over 200, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of engineering and astronomy. Built between 300 BCE and 300 CE, these pyramids were smaller than their Egyptian counterparts, but incorporated unique architectural features including elaborate chapel structures and burial chambers decorated with scenes from Meroitic religion and mythology. The precision of their construction, with internal chambers aligned to cardinal directions and astronomical phenomena, suggests mathematical knowledge comparable to other ancient civilizations. Kushite metallurgical techniques were among the most advanced in the ancient world. Archaeological analysis of iron artifacts from Meroe reveals sophisticated understanding of carbon content, temperature control, and alloy production. The city's ironworkers produced tools and weapons that were exported throughout northeastern Africa and may have contributed to the spread of iron technology across the continent. The decline of Meroitic civilization in the 4th century CE remains poorly understood. The rise of the Kingdom of Axum in Ethiopia disrupted traditional trade routes, while climate change may have reduced the reliability of Nile floods essential for agriculture. The arrival of Nuba peoples from the west introduced new cultural influences that gradually transformed Kushite society. By 350 CE, the royal court at Meroe had been abandoned, and the distinctive Meroitic culture had disappeared from the historical record. Far across the world, in the river valleys of ancient China, other sophisticated civilizations were experiencing their own cycles of growth and transformation. The Sanxingdui culture, which flourished in the Sichuan basin from approximately 1200 to 1000 BCE, created bronze artifacts of such extraordinary quality and unique artistic style that their discovery revolutionized understanding of ancient Chinese civilization. The Sanxingdui site, first excavated in 1986, yielded bronze masks, sculptures and ritual objects unlike anything previously known from ancient China. The famous bronze masks, some over a metre wide with protruding eyes and ornate decorations, suggest religious or ceremonial practices distinct from those documented in early Chinese historical texts. The largest bronze sculptures, including trees over 3 metres tall decorated with birds and mythological creatures, demonstrate casting techniques that exceeded contemporary achievements in other regions of China. The sophistication of Sanxingdui bronze technology is evident in the size and complexity of individual pieces. The largest ritual vessels weigh over 180 kilograms and were cast in single operations requiring precise control of temperature, metal composition, and mold design. Chemical analysis reveals bronze alloys optimized for specific applications, weapons with high tin content for hardness, ritual vessels with lead additions for easier casting, and decorative objects with zinc additions for enhanced appearance. Sanxingdui artisans also worked with gold, creating masks and decorations using techniques that included sheet hammering, repoussé work, and granulation. The gold content of Sanxingdui artifacts, analysed through X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy, indicates sources from local river systems that were systematically exploited for precious metal production. The sudden abandonment of Sanxingdui around 1000 BCE coincided with major environmental changes in the Sichuan basin. Geological evidence suggests that earthquake activity altered river courses, while climate proxies indicate increasing aridity that may have stressed agricultural systems. The population appears to have relocated to nearby sites, carrying their technological knowledge to new settlements that would eventually contribute to the development of classical Chinese civilization. The artistic style and religious symbolism of Sanxingdui culture disappeared almost completely from Chinese civilization, leaving no obvious traces in later traditions. This cultural discontinuity suggests that Sanxingdui represented an independent development within ancient China rather than a direct ancestor of later Chinese states. The discovery of Sanxingdui demonstrates that ancient Chinese civilization was far more diverse and regionally varied than previously understood. In the Americas, the Nazca culture of southern Peru created one of the world's most enigmatic archaeological landscapes between 100 and 700 CE. The famous Nazca lines, comprising over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 animal and plant designs drawn across 500 square kilometers of desert, represent an achievement in landscape art unmatched anywhere in the ancient world. The precision of Nazca line construction demonstrates sophisticated understanding of geometry and surveying. The lines maintain straight paths across varied terrain for distances exceeding 30 kilometers, with deviations of less than 2 meters from true straight lines. This accuracy required surveying techniques that could account for topographic variations and maintain consistent bearings across vast distances. The methods used to create the Nazca lines remain partially mysterious. Archaeological experiments suggest that the designs were laid out using grids of stakes and ropes, with workers removing dark surface stones to reveal lighter subsurface materials. The preservation of the lines for over 1,500 years in one of the world's driest deserts demonstrates both the builder's technical skill and the unique environmental conditions of the Nazca region. Nazca culture was supported by sophisticated agricultural systems adapted to desert conditions. Underground aqueducts called puquios carried water from Andean foothills to agricultural areas, some extending over 10 kilometers through underground channels carved through solid rock. Over 40 puquios have been identified in the Nazca region, many still functioning today after 1,500 years of continuous use. The engineering of puquios required precise calculation of water flow gradients, understanding of groundwater hydrology, and techniques for excavating stable underground channels through varied geological formations. The systems included vertical access shafts for maintenance, settling basins for sediment removal, and distribution networks that could irrigate thousands of hectares of agricultural land. Nazca textile production represents one of the ancient world's most sophisticated fibre arts traditions. Nazca weavers created fabrics with thread counts exceeding 500 threads per inch, using cotton and camelid fibres dyed with pigments derived from minerals, plants, and marine organisms. The complexity of Nazca textile designs, including scenes with over 100 different colours, required mastery of dyeing chemistry and weaving techniques that wouldn't be matched in Europe until the Industrial Age. Chemical analysis of Nazca textiles reveals sophisticated understanding of dye chemistry. Cochineal red dyes achieved through complex mordanting processes, blue indigo dyes requiring controlled fermentation, and purple murex dyes obtained from marine shells demonstrate knowledge of chemical processes that extended far beyond simple craft techniques. The decline of Nazca culture around 700 CE correlates with paleoclimatic evidence for severe drought conditions in the southern Andes. Ice core data from Andean glaciers indicates precipitation levels 60% below normal for extended periods, while sediment cores from regional lakes show evidence of dramatic water level reductions. The Puquio systems that had supported Nazca agriculture for centuries couldn't provide sufficient water for the population levels that had developed during more favourable climatic periods. Archaeological evidence suggests that late Nazca sites show increasing signs of social stress, including defensive architecture, evidence of conflict, and changes in burial practices that may indicate social upheaval. The elaborate ceremonial centres and monumental art projects that had characterised earlier Nazca culture were abandoned as communities focused resources on survival rather than symbolic expression. In Southeast Asia, the Srivijaya Empire dominated maritime trade routes from the 7th to 13th centuries CE, controlling commerce between China and India while developing one of history's most successful thalassocratic states. Based in Palembang on the island of Sumatra, Srivijaya controlled trade through the Strait of Malacca, one of the world's most important maritime passages. Archaeological excavations at Palembang have revealed a port city with sophisticated harbour facilities, Buddhist temples, and residential areas that supported a cosmopolitan population engaged in international commerce. The city's location on the Musi River provided access to interior regions rich in gold, aromatic woods, and spices, while its position near the strait allowed control of maritime traffic between the Indian Ocean and South China Sea. Srivijaya's maritime technology included advanced shipbuilding techniques adapted to monsoon sailing patterns and shallow river navigation. Chinese sources describe Srivijayan vessels capable of carrying over 1,000 passengers and crew, suggesting ship designs that exceeded contemporary European capabilities. Archaeological remains of harbour installations include stone quays, tidal basins, and channel markers that facilitated navigation in complex riverine environments. The empire's wealth supported Buddhist scholarship that attracted students from across Asia. The Chinese monk Qing studied at Srivijaya in the late 7th century, describing a centre of Buddhist learning with over 1,000 monks engaged in translating Sanskrit texts into Chinese. Srivijayan monasteries maintained libraries containing thousands of manuscripts and served as stopping points for pilgrims travelling between India and China. Srivijaya's political system was adapted to maritime conditions, with authority exercised through control of harbours, navigation routes, and trading relationships rather than territorial conquest. The empire maintained tributary relationships with coastal settlements throughout the Malay Peninsula, Java and Borneo, creating a commercial network that spanned thousands of kilometres of ocean. The decline of Srivijaya beginning in the 11th century resulted from multiple pressures. The rise of the Chola Empire in southern India challenged Srivijayan control of Indian Ocean trade, while the emergence of Javanese states like Majapahit created regional competitors. Changes in monsoon patterns and sea levels may have affected navigation routes and harbour facilities, while the gradual silting of the Musi River reduced Palembang's accessibility to large vessels. By the 13th century, Srivijaya's influence had declined dramatically. The final mentions of the empire in Chinese sources date to the late 13th century, after which the name disappears from historical records. The great maritime empire that had dominated Southeast Asian commerce for 6 centuries had fragmented into smaller coastal states that lacked the unity and resources to maintain control over long-distance trade networks. These diverse examples of lost civilizations, from the ironworking kingdoms of Africa to the maritime empires of Southeast Asia, demonstrate the remarkable diversity of human solutions to the challenges of organizing complex societies. Each developed unique technologies, artistic traditions, and social systems adapted to their specific environments and circumstances. The Kingdom of Kush mastered desert agriculture and iron metallurgy, while maintaining diplomatic relationships with Mediterranean powers. The Sansingdui culture created bronze artifacts of unprecedented complexity, while developing religious and artistic traditions distinct from other Chinese civilizations. The Nazca people transformed one of the world's harshest deserts into an agricultural landscape, while creating monumental art visible only from great heights. Srivijaya built a maritime empire without territorial conquest, using commercial relationships and naval technology to control trade across vast ocean distances. Yet despite their diversity, these civilizations shared common vulnerabilities to environmental change, resource depletion, and social instability. Climate fluctuations that disrupted agricultural systems, changes in trade routes that undermined commercial economies, and political pressures from competing societies all contributed to their eventual decline or transformation. The archaeological record of these civilizations provides increasingly detailed evidence of human adaptability and innovation. Recent advances in remote sensing, chemical analysis, and environmental reconstruction have revealed aspects of ancient life that were previously invisible. LIDAR surveys uncover hidden urban landscapes, isotopic analysis traces ancient trade networks, and genetic studies reveal population movements and cultural interactions across vast distances and long time periods. Perhaps most remarkably, these technological advances are revealing that many lost civilizations were far larger, more sophisticated, and more environmentally integrated than previously understood. The true extent of Maya urban development, the complexity of Amazonian agricultural systems, and the scale of African iron production have all been dramatically revised upward as new evidence emerges from ongoing archaeological research. These discoveries remind us that our understanding of human history remains incomplete and constantly evolving. Each new excavation, each application of advanced analytical techniques, and each interdisciplinary collaboration between archaeologists, climate scientists, and other specialists adds new dimensions to our understanding of how human societies have adapted to environmental challenges throughout history. As we rest in the quiet hours when consciousness fades towards sleep, these stories of lost civilizations offer both wonder and reflection. They remind us that human creativity and adaptability have produced remarkable achievements in every environment on Earth, from tropical rainforests to Arctic tundra, from high mountain valleys to ocean islands, thousands of kilometers from any mainland. Yet they also remind us of the ultimate impermanence of all human achievements. The most sophisticated technologies, the most beautiful art, and the most powerful political systems are all subject to the inexorable processes of environmental change, social transformation, and the simple passage of time. In the end, what survives longest may not be the monuments and artifacts that we typically associate with great civilizations, but the knowledge and practices that allow human communities to adapt and survive. The agricultural techniques that sustained populations through environmental stress, the craft traditions that maintained essential technologies, and the cultural practices that preserved social cohesion. These humble achievements may be more fundamental to human survival than the pyramids, palaces, and temples that capture our imagination. The stories of lost civilizations ultimately teach us that we are part of an ongoing human story that extends far beyond our individual lives and our contemporary concerns. We are the inheritors of countless experiments in human organization, technology, and cultural expression, and we're also the ancestors of future civilizations whose achievements we cannot imagine. Rest now in the knowledge that you exist within this vast continuum of human experience, connected to the astronomers of ancient Maya cities, the engineers of Angkor's waterworks, the bronze workers of Sanqingdui, and all the countless individuals whose lives and labours have contributed to the human story that continues unfolding around us in the quiet darkness of the night. The archaeological record continues to reveal civilizations that challenge our understanding of human capability and ingenuity. In the highlands of Peru, the Wari Empire flourished from approximately 600 to 1000 CE, creating one of the Andes' first truly imperial states. Unlike the Inca, who would later dominate the same regions, the Wari built their empire through a combination of military conquest, administrative efficiency, and innovative agricultural technology that transformed mountain landscapes across much of modern Peru. The Wari capital of Piquilacta, located in the Cusco Valley, covered over 50 hectares and housed an estimated 10,000 people within massive stone walls that still stand over 12 metres high. The city's rectangular compounds, arranged in precise geometric patterns, demonstrate urban planning concepts that prioritised administrative efficiency and social control. Each compound contained residential areas, workshops, storage facilities, and ceremonial spaces organised according to standardised architectural principles. Wari administrative technology included sophisticated record-keeping systems based on quipu, knotted cord devices that encoded numerical and possibly linguistic information. Recent analysis of Wari quipu has identified mathematical relationships suggesting a decimal-based counting system with computational capabilities that allowed tracking of tribute obligations, population censuses, and resource distribution across territories spanning over 1,000 kilometres. The empire's most remarkable achievement was the transformation of steep Andean slopes into productive agricultural landscapes through terrace construction on an unprecedented scale. Wari engineers built over 40,000 hectares of terraced fields, some extending continuously for kilometres up mountainsides, with vertical rises exceeding 1,000 metres. These terraces, constructed with precisely fitted stone-retaining walls and sophisticated drainage systems, increased agricultural productivity while preventing soil erosion. The precision of Wari terrace construction demonstrates advanced understanding of soil mechanics, hydrology, and structural engineering. Individual terraces were built with foundations extending 2 to 3 metres below surface level, filled with graded layers of stone and soil that provided drainage while maintaining structural stability. The irrigation system serving these terraces included canals, with gradients calculated to within centimetres per kilometre, ensuring optimal water distribution across vast agricultural complexes. Chemical analysis of Wari agricultural sites reveals intensive fertilisation practices using guano transported from coastal bird colonies over 500 kilometres away. The logistical challenges of moving thousands of tons of fertiliser across mountain terrain required organised labour systems and transportation networks that demonstrate state-level coordination of economic activities. Wari textile production represented one of the ancient world's most sophisticated fibre arts traditions. Archaeological excavations have yielded textiles with thread counts exceeding 400 threads per inch, created using techniques including supplementary weft weaving, discontinuous warp weaving, and complex tapestry methods. The dyes used in Wari textiles, analysed through mass spectrometry, include over 150 distinct colours derived from mineral, plant, and animal sources. The empire's military technology included bronze weapons and armour that gave Wari armies significant advantages over opponents using stone and wood implements. Metallurgical analysis of Wari artefacts reveals sophisticated alloying techniques, producing bronzes with tin content optimised for specific applications, high tin content for cutting weapons, medium tin for armour, and low tin for tools and agricultural implements. The decline of the Wari Empire around 1000 CE correlates with paleoclimatic evidence for severe drought conditions throughout the central Andes. Ice core data from Andean glaciers indicates precipitation levels 40 to 60% below long-term averages for periods lasting several decades. The terraced agricultural systems that had supported dense mountain populations proved vulnerable to sustained water shortages, leading to crop failures and social unrest. Archaeological evidence from late Wari sites shows increasing militarization, with defensive walls, weapons caches, and burned structures suggesting internal conflicts as resources became scarce. The administrative centres that had coordinated imperial activities were abandoned, and the complex tribute systems that had redistributed resources across the empire collapsed. Yet Wari innovations in agriculture, architecture, and administration profoundly influenced subsequent Andean civilizations. The Inca, who emerged several centuries later, adopted many Wari techniques including terrace construction, quipu record-keeping, and imperial administrative practices. The road networks that connected Wari territories became foundations for the famous Inca highway system that would span the entire length of western South America. In the Amazon basin, recent archaeological discoveries have revealed complex societies that transformed vast areas of tropical rainforest into managed landscapes supporting dense populations. The Marajara culture, which flourished on Marajo Island at the mouth of the Amazon River from approximately 400 to 1400 CE, created earthwork complexes that rank among the largest pre-Columbian constructions in South America. The Marajara site of Teso dos Bichos covers over 90 hectares and includes ceremonial mounds rising 20 metres above the surrounding floodplain. These artificial hills, built through centuries of careful earth movement, required moving over 6 million cubic metres of soil, a construction project comparable to building several Egyptian pyramids. The mound served multiple functions, providing elevated platforms for elite residences, ceremonial areas, and refuge during seasonal floods. Archaeological analysis of Marajara ceramics reveals some of the most sophisticated pottery traditions in the ancient Americas. Marajara vessels, decorated with complex geometric and zoomorphic designs, were created using techniques including polychrome painting, excising, incising, and applique work. The largest ceremonial vessels, standing over 1.5 metres tall and weighing several hundred kilograms, required specialised kilns and firing techniques that maintained precise temperature control for extended periods. The iconography of Marajara ceramics suggests complex religious and mythological systems centred on transformations between human and animal forms. Recurring motifs include jaguars, anacondas, harpy eagles, and other rainforest animals depicted in elaborate ceremonial contexts. Some vessels contain internal chambers that create acoustic effects when liquids are poured, suggesting use in rituals involving sound manipulation. Recent LiDAR surveys in the Amazon basin have revealed the true extent of pre-Columbian landscape modification. Areas previously thought to be pristine rainforest contain thousands of geometric earthworks, raised field systems, and settlement mounds indicating human populations in the millions before European contact. These discoveries are revolutionizing understanding of Amazon ecology, suggesting that much of what appears to be natural rainforest is actually anthropogenic landscape shaped by indigenous management practices over millennia. The raised field systems of the Llanos de Mojos in Bolivia, constructed between 300 and 1400 CE, covered over 20,000 square kilometres with agricultural earthworks designed to manage seasonal flooding. These systems included raised planting surfaces connected by canal networks that could drain excess water during floods and provide irrigation during dry seasons. The engineering precision required to construct these systems across vast distances demonstrates regional coordination of landscape management on continental scales. Soil analysis of Amazonian raised fields reveals sophisticated understanding of nutrient management and crop rotation. Archaeological botanists have identified over 70 different plant species cultivated in these systems, including maize, beans, squash, sweet potatoes, and numerous tree crops that created forest gardens combining agriculture with forest management. The productivity of these systems may have exceeded that of modern Amazon agriculture, while maintaining forest cover and biodiversity. The collapse of complex Amazon societies in the 15th and 16th centuries resulted primarily from disease epidemics introduced by European contact. Archaeological evidence suggests population declines of 90% or more in many regions, transforming managed landscapes into the wilderness encountered by later European explorers. The sophisticated agricultural and settlement systems that had supported millions of people were abandoned and gradually reclaimed by forest succession. In Europe, the Romano-British civilization that flourished from 43 to 410 CE created urban landscapes and agricultural systems that wouldn't be matched again until the medieval period. The transformation of Britain from Iron Age tribal society to Roman province involved massive infrastructure projects including roads, aqueducts, baths, and villa complexes that introduced Mediterranean urban culture to northern Europe. The Roman road system in Britain totaled over 16,000 kilometres of paved highways, connecting 50-plus major towns and hundreds of smaller settlements. Archaeological analysis of Roman road construction reveals sophisticated engineering techniques including cambered surfaces for drainage, multiple foundation layers using graded stone and gravel, and stone paving designed to withstand heavy traffic loads. Some sections of Roman roads remained the primary transportation routes in Britain for over 1,500 years. Roman hydraulic engineering in Britain included aqueduct systems serving major cities like London, Bath and Chester. The aqueduct serving Roman Lincoln transported water over 80 kilometres from sources in the Lincolnshire Wolds, maintaining precise gradients that provided adequate flow while preventing erosion. The system included settling tanks, distribution networks, and fountain systems that supplied running water to public buildings and private residences. The villa system that developed in Roman Britain represents one of Europe's earliest examples of intensive agricultural estates combining farming, manufacturing and luxury residence functions. Villa complexes like Fishbourne Palace covered over 3 hectares and included residential wings, bath suites, workshops, storage facilities, and gardens designed in the Mediterranean style with exotic plants and decorative water features. Archaeological analysis of Romano-British agricultural practices reveals intensive farming systems that supported population levels not reached again until the 18th century. The introduction of new crops, including improved wheat varieties, oats, and various vegetables, increased agricultural productivity, while villa-based estates organised farming activities across thousands of hectares. The withdrawal of Roman administration from Britain in 410 CE led to rapid decline of urban centres and complex economic systems. Archaeological evidence from sites like Wroxeter and Silchester shows that major towns were largely abandoned within decades of Roman withdrawal. The sophisticated infrastructure that had supported urban populations, aqueducts, sewerage systems, paved roads, and administrative buildings, fell into disrepair and was gradually dismantled for building materials. The collapse of Romano-British civilization was so complete that many technological capabilities were lost for centuries. The production of window glass, hypocaust heating systems and concrete construction disappeared from Britain and wasn't reintroduced until the Norman period or later. Even basic urban amenities like paved streets and running water wouldn't return to most British towns until the modern era. Yet Romano-British influence persisted in landscape features, settlement patterns, and agricultural practices that shaped subsequent British development. Many modern English towns are built on Roman foundations. Medieval churches often incorporate Roman building materials, and field systems established during the Roman period continued to influence agricultural practices throughout the medieval period. The scientific analysis of these lost civilizations continues to reveal new aspects of human adaptability and innovation. Advanced analytical techniques are providing unprecedented insights into ancient technologies, environmental relationships, and social organization. Isotopic analysis of human and animal remains traces migration patterns and dietary changes across centuries. Chemical fingerprinting of artifacts identifies trade networks spanning continents. Genetic analysis of crop remains documents agricultural innovation and plant domestication processes. Perhaps most remarkably, these analytical techniques are revealing that ancient peoples possessed scientific knowledge that in many cases exceeded European capabilities until the modern era. Maya mathematical and astronomical achievements, Inca engineering capabilities, African metallurgical techniques, and Amazonian ecological knowledge all demonstrate sophisticated understanding of natural processes and technological applications. The preservation of this ancient knowledge in archaeological context provides invaluable perspectives on sustainable resource use, environmental adaptation, and social organization. Traditional ecological knowledge encoded in ancient agricultural systems, architectural techniques adapted to local climate conditions, and social practices that maintained stability over centuries offer insights relevant to contemporary challenges. Climate proxy data from archaeological sites also provides crucial baselines for understanding natural climate variability and ecosystem responses to environmental change. Ice cores from Andean glaciers, sediment cores from African lakes, and pollen records from around the world contain information about past climates that extends the historical record by thousands of years. The study of societal collapse in archaeological contexts offers particularly relevant insights for understanding contemporary challenges. The identification of early warning signs, tipping points, and cascading failures in ancient societies provides frameworks for recognizing similar patterns in modern systems. The resilient strategies employed by societies that successfully adapted to environmental change offer models for sustainable development and crisis management. As archaeological techniques continue to advance and new sites are discovered, our understanding of human history becomes increasingly complex and nuanced. Remote sensing technologies are revealing hidden landscapes. Underwater archaeology is exploring submerged coastlines, and laboratory analysis is extracting information from microscopic traces of ancient activities. Each discovery adds new dimensions to the human story, revealing capabilities, achievements, and adaptations that expand our understanding of human potential. The civilizations we have explored tonight, from the Indus Valley to the Amazon basin, from Easter Island to the Sahara Desert, represent only a fraction of human cultural diversity and technological innovation documented in the archaeological record. Yet they also demonstrate the fundamental continuity of human experience across time and space. The challenges faced by ancient peoples, organizing complex societies, managing environmental resources, maintaining social cohesion, adapting to climate change, remain essentially unchanged despite technological advances. The solutions they developed, the mistakes they made, and the legacies they left behind continue to inform our understanding of what it means to be human. In the quiet depths of night, when the contemporary world fades into the background of consciousness, we can sense our connection to this vast tapestry of human experience. We are linked to the Indus Valley engineers who designed the world's first sewerage systems, to the Maya astronomers who calculated planetary cycles with extraordinary precision, to the Rapa Nui sculptors who carved monumental art on one of Earth's most isolated islands. Their achievements inspire us, their failures warn us, and their endurance reminds us that human creativity and adaptability have enabled our species to thrive in every environment on Earth. The knowledge they accumulated, the technologies they developed, and the cultural traditions they established continue to influence human society in ways both obvious and subtle. As consciousness gradually yields to sleep and dreams, we carry with us the stories of these remarkable civilizations, their triumphs and tragedies, their innovations and limitations, their temporary existence and lasting influence. In the realm of dreams, perhaps we can visit their cities at the height of their glory, witness their ceremonies and celebrations, and understand something of the hopes and fears that motivated their builders. The 1,000 years of lost civilizations we have explored tonight represent just one chapter in the ongoing human story that continues unfolding around us. Tomorrow will bring new archaeological discoveries, new analytical techniques, and new insights into the rich diversity of human cultural achievement. But tonight, we rest in the knowledge that we are part of this continuing story, connected across time and space to all those who have participated in the great human experiment of creating meaning, beauty, and understanding in an ever-changing world. Sleep well, knowing that you are part of this eternal human journey of discovery, adaptation, and hope, a journey that connects the ancient past to the present moment and extends forward into possibilities we can barely imagine. The archaeological record of lost civilizations extends beyond the well-documented centers of ancient power, to encompass societies that flourished in environments we might consider marginal or challenging. In the highlands of Ethiopia, the kingdom of Aksum emerged around 100 CE as one of the ancient world's great trading powers, controlling commerce between the Roman Empire and ancient India, while developing unique architectural and technological achievements. The city of Aksum, located at an elevation of over 2,000 meters in the Ethiopian highlands, became a cosmopolitan centre that attracted merchants, diplomats, and scholars from across Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean world. Archaeological excavations have revealed palace complexes, churches, and residential areas that demonstrate sophisticated urban planning, adapted to mountainous terrain and seasonal rainfall patterns. The most distinctive features of Aksumite architecture are the massive stone obelisks that still dominate the modern city's skyline. The largest of these monuments, known as the Great Stele, originally stood over 33 metres tall and weighed approximately 520 tons, making it one of the largest monoliths ever quarried and erected by ancient peoples. The precision of its carving, featuring detailed representations of multi-storey buildings complete with doors, windows, and decorative elements, demonstrates mastery of stoneworking techniques that required sophisticated tools and mathematical knowledge. Aksumite engineering capabilities extended to complex hydraulic systems that collected and stored rainwater in underground cisterns carved from solid rock. The Mai Shum Reservoir, excavated entirely from bedrock, could store over 10,000 cubic meters of water and featured distribution channels that supplied the royal quarter and major religious complexes. These systems enabled urban populations to survive the pronounced dry seasons that characterize Ethiopian highland climate. The kingdom's wealth derived from its strategic position, controlling trade routes between the interior of Africa and Red Sea ports that connected to broader Indian Ocean commercial networks. Aksumite merchants traded African gold, ivory, rhinoceros horn, and aromatic resins for silk, spices, and manufactured goods from India, Ceylon, and China. The kingdom's prosperity is evident in the abundance of foreign luxury goods found in archaeological contexts, including Chinese porcelain, Indian textiles, and Roman glassware. Aksum was among the first African kingdoms to adopt Christianity, officially converting under King Ezana around 330 CE. This conversion had profound cultural consequences, as Christian Aksum developed unique religious architecture, manuscript traditions, and liturgical practices that combined Ethiopian cultural elements with broader Christian traditions. The Church of St. Mary of Zion, traditionally considered the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, became a pilgrimage destination that attracted visitors from throughout the Christian world. The Aksumite script, known as Ge'ez, represents one of Africa's indigenous writing systems and served as the liturgical language of Ethiopian Christianity. Ge'ez inscriptions on stone monuments provide detailed historical records of royal achievements, military campaigns, and religious activities spanning several centuries. These texts offer rare insights into ancient African political systems, diplomatic relationships, and cultural practices. The decline of Aksumite power began in the 7th century CE as Islamic expansion disrupted traditional trade routes and reduced access to Red Sea commerce. The kingdom's Christian identity also isolated it from increasingly Islamic commercial networks, while environmental factors including deforestation and soil erosion may have reduced agricultural productivity in the highlands. By 1000 CE, the great city of Aksum had been largely abandoned, and political power had shifted southward to new centres in the Ethiopian highlands. However, Aksumite cultural traditions, architectural techniques, and religious practices continued to influence Ethiopian civilization for centuries. The unique forms of Ethiopian Christianity, the tradition of rock-hewn churches, and the Ge'ez literary tradition all trace their origins to the Aksumite period. In the Pacific Ocean, the Lapita cultural complex represents one of humanity's most remarkable achievements in maritime exploration and colonization. Between 1600 and 500 BCE, Lapita peoples spread across over 4,000 kilometers of ocean, establishing settlements on hundreds of islands from the Bismarck archipelago to Samoa, and becoming the ancestors of modern Polynesian, Micronesian, and Melanesian populations. The Lapita expansion required sophisticated maritime technology, including double-hulled sailing canoes capable of carrying families, livestock, and agricultural supplies across thousands of kilometers of open ocean. Archaeological evidence from Lapita sites includes adzes, fishhooks, and other tools adapted for marine environments, while analysis of obsidian artifacts reveals trade networks spanning distances that exceeded contemporary maritime capabilities in other parts of the world. Lapita pottery, characterized by distinctive geometric designs created using carved stamps, represents one of the ancient world's most widespread artistic traditions. Chemical analysis of Lapita ceramics reveals standardized production techniques and shared design motifs across sites separated by thousands of kilometers, suggesting cultural unity maintained despite vast geographic dispersal. The colonization strategy employed by Lapita peoples involved transporting entire agricultural systems to previously uninhabited islands. Archaeological evidence shows that Lapita settlers brought pigs, dogs, chickens, and agricultural crops including taro, yam, breadfruit, and coconut to islands throughout the Pacific. This transported landscape approach enabled rapid establishment of sustainable settlements in diverse island environments. Lapita navigation techniques, reconstructed through ethnographic study of traditional Pacific navigation traditions, involve sophisticated knowledge of wind patterns, ocean currents, star positions, and wave behavior. Master navigators could determine position and direction using subtle environmental cues including cloud formations, bird flight patterns, and the taste and temperature of seawater. The transformation of Lapita culture into distinct regional traditions occurred gradually over several centuries as island populations adapted to local environmental conditions and developed independent cultural innovations. The process involved changes in pottery styles, architectural techniques, and subsistence strategies that created the cultural diversity characteristic of Pacific Island societies at European contact. In North America, the Mississippian culture flourished from approximately 800 to 1600 CE, creating some of the continent's largest prehistoric cities and most complex political systems. The Mississippian center of Cahokia, located near present-day St. Louis, Missouri, supported an estimated population of 15,000 to 20,000 people, and controlled territories extending across much of the American Midwest. The centerpiece of Cahokia was Monk's Mound, a massive earthen pyramid covering 14 acres at its base and rising over 30 meters above the surrounding floodplain. The mound required moving approximately 814,000 cubic meters of earth, representing one of the largest construction projects undertaken by prehistoric North Americans. The summit platform supported buildings used for ceremonies and administrative activities that coordinated regional political and economic relationships. Archaeological analysis of Cahokia reveals sophisticated urban planning, including residential neighborhoods, craft production areas, public plazas, and defensive palisades. The city's Grand Plaza covered 20 hectares and could accommodate gatherings of thousands of people for ceremonies and trading activities. Residential areas were organized according to social rank, with elite compounds located near ceremonial centers and common residences distributed throughout the urban area. Mississippian agricultural systems supported dense populations through intensive cultivation of maize, beans, and squash, supplemented by wild plant and animal resources. Archaeological evidence indicates that Cahokia's inhabitants modified floodplain environments through controlled burning, water management, and soil enhancement techniques that increased the productivity of native ecosystems. The city's economic influence extended across much of eastern North America through trade networks that distributed specialized goods including copper from the Great Lakes region, shells from the Gulf Coast, and mica from Appalachian sources. Cahokian craftspeople produced sophisticated art objects including engraved shell cups, copper plates, and ceramic vessels that incorporated religious and political symbolism. Mississippian society was characterized by pronounced social stratification, evidenced in burial practices, residential architecture, and access to luxury goods. Elite burials contain elaborate grave goods including copper ornaments, shell beads, and imported materials that demonstrate participation in long-distance exchange networks. Common burials, by contrast, contain few or no grave goods and suggest limited access to prestige materials. The decline of Cahokia beginning around 1200 CE coincided with climate change that reduced agricultural productivity in the American Midwest. The medieval warm period, which had enabled population growth and agricultural intensification, gave way to cooler conditions that shortened growing seasons and reduced maize yields. Archaeological evidence suggests that urban populations declined gradually as people returned to smaller, more dispersed settlement patterns. The political systems that had coordinated regional relationships also fragmented during this period. Smaller Mississippian centers continued to function for several centuries after Cahokia's decline, but none achieved comparable scale or regional influence. When European explorers reached the Mississippi Valley in the 16th century, they encountered the descendants of Mississippian peoples living in smaller towns and villages that retained elements of earlier cultural traditions. In the Arctic, the Dorset culture represented a remarkable adaptation to one of Earth's most challenging environments, flourishing across the North American Arctic and Greenland from approximately 500 BCE to 1500 CE. Dorset peoples developed sophisticated technologies for hunting marine mammals, constructing shelters from snow and ice, and surviving in conditions where temperatures remained below freezing for most of the year. Dorset hunting technology included toggling harpoons, ice creepers for walking on frozen surfaces, and specialized tools for hunting seals at breathing holes in sea ice. The precision required for seal hunting, waiting motionless for hours at small holes in the ice, then striking with perfect accuracy at the moment a seal surfaced to breathe, demanded extraordinary skill and patience that represented cultural adaptation to Arctic conditions refined over centuries. Archaeological evidence from Dorset sites includes sophisticated carved objects made from walrus, ivory, antler, and stone that demonstrate high levels of artistic achievement despite the challenging environmental conditions. Dorset art includes human and animal figures, masks, and amulets that suggest complex spiritual beliefs and ceremonial practices adapted to Arctic lifestyles. Dorset architecture included both temporary and semi-permanent structures adapted to Arctic conditions. Winter houses were constructed using stone foundations, organic walls, and snow block roofs that provided insulation while allowing natural lighting through translucent ice windows. Summer structures were more portable, using skin covers supported by wooden or bone frameworks that could be quickly assembled and disassembled. The social organisation of Dorset culture emphasised cooperation and resource sharing necessary for survival in Arctic environments. Archaeological evidence suggests relatively egalitarian societies without pronounced social stratification, though specialised knowledge required for successful hunting and toolmaking created informal leadership roles. The disappearance of Dorset culture around 1500 CE coincided with the arrival of Thule peoples, ancestors of modern Inuit, who brought new technologies including kayaks, umiaks, and dog sleds that provided advantages in hunting and transportation. The Thule expansion may have displaced Dorset populations through competition for resources or direct conflict, though some intermarriage and cultural exchange likely occurred. Climate change during the Little Ice Age, which began around 1300 CE, also stressed Dorset subsistence systems by altering sea ice patterns and marine mammal distributions. The combination of environmental change and cultural competition from Thule peoples created pressures that Dorset culture could not successfully navigate, leading to its eventual disappearance from the archaeological record. The study of these diverse lost civilizations continues to reveal new insights into human adaptability and the complex relationships between culture, technology, and environment. Advanced analytical techniques are providing unprecedented detail about ancient lifeways, technological capabilities, and environmental interactions. Isotopic analysis of human and animal remains traces migration patterns, dietary changes, and environmental conditions across multiple generations. Strontium isotope ratios in teeth and bones indicate geographic origins and movement patterns, while carbon and nitrogen isotopes reveal information about diet and environmental conditions. These techniques are revealing previously unknown aspects of ancient population movements and cultural interactions. Genetic analysis of both human and crop remains provides insights into population relationships and agricultural development. Ancient DNA extracted from archaeological contexts is documenting the spread of human populations, the domestication of plants and animals, and the transmission of diseases that influenced historical developments. Remote sensing technologies are revolutionizing archaeological discovery and site documentation. LiDAR surveys are revealing hidden archaeological features across landscapes previously thought to be natural. Ground-penetrating radar provides detailed images of subsurface features without excavation, while satellite imagery enables monitoring of site conditions and identification of previously unknown archaeological sites. Advanced dating techniques provide increasingly precise chronological frameworks for understanding cultural change and environmental relationships. Radiocarbon dating using accelerator mass spectrometry can date samples containing microscopic amounts of organic material, while optically stimulated luminescence dating provides ages for sediments and ceramics, independent of organic materials. These technological advances are also enabling new approaches to understanding ancient environments and climate change. High-resolution climate proxy data from ice cores, tree rings, lake sediments, and marine cores provide detailed records of past environmental conditions that can be compared with archaeological evidence for cultural changes. The integration of archaeological data with climate proxies is revealing the complex ways that environmental change influence human societies. Rather than simple cause and effect relationships, the evidence suggests that cultural responses to environmental change were mediated by social, political, and economic factors that varied significantly between different societies and time periods. Perhaps most importantly, the study of lost civilizations is providing insights relevant to contemporary challenges, including climate change adaptation, sustainable resource use, and social resilience. Traditional ecological knowledge preserved in archaeological contexts offers alternative approaches to environmental management that may be applicable to current sustainability challenges. The agricultural techniques developed by ancient peoples often demonstrated remarkable efficiency and sustainability. Andean terrace systems maintained soil fertility for centuries without external inputs. while Amazonian forest gardens combined high productivity with biodiversity conservation. These examples provide models for sustainable agriculture that could inform modern agricultural development. Ancient urban planning and architectural techniques also offer insights for contemporary city design. Passive cooling systems used in desert cities, rainwater harvesting techniques, and urban layouts designed to optimize airflow and natural lighting demonstrate approaches to urban sustainability that are increasingly relevant as cities seek to reduce energy consumption and environmental impact. The social institutions that enabled ancient societies to coordinate large-scale projects and maintain social cohesion over long periods also provide insights for contemporary governance and social organization. The mechanisms used to manage common resources, resolve conflicts, and maintain social cooperation in ancient societies may offer alternatives to modern institutional arrangements. As we continue to uncover the stories of lost civilizations, we are reminded that human cultural diversity encompasses far more than the familiar narratives of European and Mediterranean civilizations. Every continent and island region has produced sophisticated societies that developed unique solutions to the fundamental challenges of human organization and environmental adaptation. These discoveries also remind us that cultural innovation and technological development have occurred continuously throughout human history, rather than being concentrated in particular time periods or geographical regions. The traditional narrative of human progress as a linear development from primitive to civilized societies is being replaced by recognition of the cyclical nature of cultural development and the remarkable achievements of societies in all time periods and environmental contexts. The stories of lost civilizations ultimately demonstrate both the remarkable creativity of human cultures and the ultimate impermanence of all human achievements. The most sophisticated technologies, the most beautiful art, and the most powerful political systems are all subject to the processes of environmental change, social transformation, and the passage of time. Yet these stories also demonstrate the resilience of human knowledge and cultural traditions. Elements of lost civilizations persist in the practices, languages, and traditions of descendant communities, while archaeological investigation preserves aspects of ancient knowledge for contemporary study and application. In the quiet hours of the night, as consciousness gradually fades towards sleep and dreams, we can sense our connection to this vast heritage of human experience. The achievements we have explored tonight, from the icebound settlements of the Dorset culture to the tropical cities of the Amazon basin, from the highland kingdoms of Ethiopia to the ocean-spanning networks of the Pacific, represent just a small fraction of human cultural diversity and achievement. Each of these societies face the same fundamental challenges that confront human communities today: how to organize cooperative relationships among large numbers of people, how to manage environmental resources sustainably, how to maintain social cohesion in the face of internal and external pressures, and how to create meaning and beauty in daily life. The solutions they developed, the mistakes they made, and the legacies they left behind continue to inform our understanding of human potential and human limitations. Their stories remind us that we are part of an ongoing experiment in human civilization that extends far beyond our individual lives and contemporary concerns. As we drift towards sleep in this ancient human rhythm that connects us to all those who have rested before us, we carry with us the knowledge that human creativity and adaptability have enabled our species to thrive in every environment on Earth. The challenges we face today, environmental change, resource constraints, social inequality, technological disruption, are variations on themes that human societies have confronted throughout history. The archaeological record provides both cautionary tales and sources of inspiration for addressing contemporary challenges. The collapses it documents warn us of the consequences of unsustainable practices and social fragmentation, while the innovations it preserves offer alternative approaches to persistent human problems. Most fundamentally, the study of lost civilizations reminds us that human culture is both remarkably robust and ultimately fragile. The knowledge systems, technological capabilities, and social institutions that enable complex civilization can be lost or transformed with surprising rapidity, yet human communities possess remarkable capabilities for adaptation, innovation, and recovery. Rest now in the knowledge that you are part of this continuing human story, connected across time and space to all those who have participated in the great ongoing experiment of creating meaning, beauty, and understanding in an ever-changing world. The The dreams that come may carry echoes of these ancient voices, whispers of forgotten knowledge, and glimpses of the remarkable diversity of human achievement that enriches our understanding of what it means to be human. Sleep well, knowing that tomorrow's archaeological discoveries will continue to expand this story, revealing new chapters in the human experience and new insights into the creative potential that has enabled our species to flourish across the full range of terrestrial environments. The journey of discovery continues, and each of us participates in writing the next chapters of this eternal human story.